Thanks, Jonathan. I'm trying to take back control here, so give me 1 second until that happens, and then we'll move right ahead.
Like you got it, you go. Here we go.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time this morning, and good morning. Realize that folks are investing upwards of an hour with us, and hopefully we make that a fun and informative time for you. My name's Scott Trathen. I'll be joined by Gladys later on in the session. We're both part of Microsoft 365 Engineering, and we're pleased that you've decided to spend your time with us today. Talking about how we're planning to invest that time with you all. I'm going to walk through the first 20 minutes using slides, give you an overview of the offer about how to supercharge your reporting with M365 data. We'll talk about use cases and value, and then maybe move on to a more exciting part where we'll show you some demonstrations, 4 different ones, in fact, and we'll reserve some time for questions at the end, depending upon how the flow goes and how many questions come into chat along the way. I would just ask that as you have questions, please do put them in chat and please ask them. I'm happy to be interrupted, as is Gladys, to make sure you get value from your time here. With that said, I just wanted to take a second and realize the audience that I'm talking to from a health and life sciences perspective, and share some of the things that caught my attention when I look at headlines over the course of the past year or so. Lots and lots of acquisitions in the pharmaceutical space, specifically in the US. It caught my attention that the baby formula shortage, even as of yesterday, is getting worse. Obviously, lots of stuff going on from a COVID perspective still, and all the impacts of supply chain, and all the impacts of staffing, and all the impacts of burnout for providers over the course of the past 3 years. Things are going on from divestitures and acquisitions and mergers, even in the provider space. Supply chain challenges continue. Walgreens investing in a new business. I won't continue reading these to you, but I want to stress for a second, all of these are pretty significant impacts and or decisions that have been made by executive teams. And that sets the premise for what we want to talk about today. When we've looked at the marketplace, and specifically citing research from McKinsey, as you might expect, up to 70% of C-suite executives, spend up to 70% of their time on decision making. That should surprise no one. But when you dig a little deeper, 61% of managers say that decision making, at least half the time, is ineffective. And when you do the math on a typical Fortune 500 company, that equals 500,000 days of managers' time that is effectively wasted in the decision-making cycle. Think back to all those decisions that had to be made for those headlines and how much waste there was in that organizational process. The leaders that we talk to, they're looking for more and more data to be able to inform their decision-making. They're looking for data from a hindsight perspective. In a hybrid world, folks are trying to understand what was collaboration and collaboration patterns like pre-COVID. How do they compare that to now in a hybrid environment? Folks want insight. They want data in a more near real-time fashion. And ultimately, folks want to be able to develop predictive models on top of all of this big data, so they understand moving forward, are they trending as they were anticipating from a decision-making standpoint? And yet we still see, when we think about how these decisions are being made, that there's some gaps. Let me explain those for a second, please. The C-suite folks are continuing to look at that forward-looking data, and they're doing a better job of doing that with both internal and external data sources. We think about this 2 by 2, both internal and external data, and structured and unstructured. And you can think about these traditional systems of record, internal structured data, as being something that we've tapped, or hopefully you've tapped, for decision making for quite a while. And a lot of organizations are, as this data shows, moving towards looking at things like social media, looking at things for external inclusion, external unstructured data. But our premise is that there is a quadrant of data, which is potentially the most informative, missing from all of this. If you think about all of the decisions that I started with, all of those announcements that I started with, acquisitions, mergers, supply chain challenges, our premise is that by including data about how your organization works and with whom, which is contained in Microsoft 365, if you're a Microsoft 365 customer and user, really supercharges your decision making, because that is a core asset that's privileged to you as a company. Nobody else has that data. Nobody else can buy that data. Understanding how your organization works and with whom can really fuel your decision making. If you're unfamiliar with Microsoft 365, it is you can think about Outlook and Teams that we're using today, and SharePoint and OneDrive, and the Outlook applications, PowerPoint and Word and Excel. All of these things are surfaces upon which users create data. They share that data with others, and that data and those connections are what yield insight. This is a massive data set. It's the largest data set in the world about how work gets done. This is just for perspective, 18 trillion graph nodes. That's spanning approximately 300 million users and 270 million Teams users. This data can inform a variety of use cases. And what we've decided to focus on is these 4 quadrants. I'll take a second here, I'll double click on them, and then we'll talk about some customer usage of them before we actually show you what it looks like in real life, or could look like in real life. Customer relationship management, and I realize I'm talking to a health and life science audience, so I'm mindful of that, but you can think about customers in a variety of ways. You can think about that as providers in some cases who you're trying to partner with. You can think about that even in the spirit of supply chain, as I double click on this for just a second. How do we understand those relationships and collaboration that happens from our organization to external parties? If we use CRM in a traditional selling sense, that's a system of record. So much of the actual interaction happens not in that system, which is a record-keeping system, but in this collaboration system. And the same thing is true of suppliers. Understanding the relationships that you have with suppliers, the depth of those relationships. Perhaps you have chosen a low-cost bidder, but in fact, there's a hidden cost of working with that bidder, which might be you're investing 4 FTEs to deal with data quality issues or deal with slow or poor response times. So there's a hidden cost potentially of working with that supplier or long tail suppliers. Business process also allows us to understand how things are happening inside of an organization. So what are those processes that are important to your business? Maybe annual budgeting is one of them. How do we think about who are all the players that are involved in that? What is their role? And is that the expected role from an organizational perspective? Security and compliance. The one, not only can you think about do you have HIPAA data in your collaboration environment, which is an easy win, but I'll tell you that this is one of the ways which Microsoft uses this data. We've got a pretty strong SharePoint environment, very large, if you might imagine Microsoft. And our team that manages that uses this data from us in order to understand how data travels within our quote unquote 4 walls of Microsoft. And when we overlay sensitivity labels to that, we can also see, hey, is that what we expect? Do the right people have access, and only the right people, to sensitive information? Again, going back to mergers and acquisitions kind of projects. How are we managing who has access to what information? And maybe more importantly, what information is leaving our quote unquote 4 walls? What kind of confidential or proprietary information is being shared externally? How do we understand who's doing that and why, and potentially shut that down? And on people productivity, we understand that there's a lot of questions in a hybrid world about productivity. What does that mean? How is that defined? We have data that can help companies derive bespoke metrics on productivity. And we're also surfacing other sources that we have in Microsoft, both from Viva and from Productivity Score, to allow that to happen inside of organizations. So as you think about, again, this data can apply in a number of ways. These are 4 areas where we've really tried to highlight or focus. And if we double click onto these, we have a whole series of solutions that we have built and are building to help customers realize value. And these are, as you can see around the wheel, these are actual use cases of the data. Today, Gladys is going to do a couple things, including demonstrate for you organizational network analysis, which is a solution accelerator coming from us in early next year. She's going to demonstrate for you skills finder and talent alignment, which is really about expertise location, not in the sense that I'm responsible for crafting a bio that says these are the things I'm expert in, but rather in using the data that I create by doing my job every day, not doing anything additional, but then deducing and inferring those things that I'm expert in and surfacing that for others to be able to find. It's also really interesting input for things like talent marketplaces for those who are more advanced from an HR perspective. And lastly, Gladys is going to demonstrate relationship mesh, which is all about using this data, as I mentioned earlier, with external parties to understand where relationship strength and opportunities are. You can think about that from a sales perspective or from a supply chain perspective. But these are, again, not the only use cases for this bulk raw data. Let me just pause for a second. I have chat up. I don't see any questions thus far. Are there any questions thus far? I'm going to keep trucking, but I'm just double checking that I'm not missing any questions so far.
Don't see anything at the moment, Scott, but please, if anything comes up.
Apparently nobody's listening to me, or I'm doing it perfectly. And I doubt it's the latter, so nobody's listening. Stephen, wonderful. Stephen has a question of a question. What's your question, Stephen? Thanks for calling.
He might be on mute, but just put it in the chat. All right, we'll move on. Gladys, on to you.
No, it's not Gladys's time yet.
Oh,
Okay, I'm going to keep trucking. So this is just a double click. I want to be respectful of time, but as I tried to show you the Ferris wheel of use cases, this is another way to view that. And I literally, I'm going to step through these slides without a lot of overlay, just so you have a chance to see them and read them to the degree that you want to. Customer relationship analytics really, again, can apply to supply chain too. It's all about mining the data. I see Stephen's question, and I see a couple questions here. Stephen, does your organization need to be using 365 for several years to get this data? Great question. Your organization does need to be using 365 to get this data. Absolutely. The amount of data that you have does not necessarily a function of how long you've been using it. When you migrated, oftentimes folks don't just cut over and whatever data was there prior just exists in some other system. Folks bring some amount of data with them. And so potentially you have more data in M365 than you realize. But what we can allow is access to any data that is in the M365 system. So if you just started using it, but you brought data from the past year or a couple of years, it's potentially there. And then a question from Sherry Jordan about Starburst and data mesh. Relationship mesh is merely the name of the solution accelerator. It's not necessarily intended to apply any kind of relationship between Starburst and data mesh. What we're doing in relationship mesh is taking data from M365 as it relates specifically to a seller or supply chain population and marrying it with a system of record from a seller perspective, that's CRM, to determine who are key relationships and how much activity do we have with them, meetings, emails, Teams chats, data sharing, etc. I spent a lot of time on that slide, so apologies. I will move more quickly through the subsequent slides. From a business process standpoint, because we allow clients the option to take a very rich set of data, you can mine this to understand in a really rich way what are these communications about. Although it might be a subject line of annual budgeting, because the body of the email, should you choose to take it for your analysis, again, you're in charge of that, you can begin to surface keywords and the exact point of that interaction, so you can start to associate meetings, time, energy, and investment with key business processes inside of your organization. Security and compliance, I talked about this. There's lots of interest in sectors outside of HLS for things like fraud detection. So also a possibility within HLS. And then lastly, people and productivity analysis, where, hybrid work, almost everybody I talk to wants to understand what's happening in a hybrid environment, in this environment that we are meeting on today, because it is the common thread, whether I'm in the home office or I'm in an office. This is how we all come together. So what can I understand about effectiveness of meetings as a result? Who's got their camera on? How are they responding to meetings? Are these meetings engaging and valuable? This is a great data set for folks who are trying to get their arms around hybrid work. Let's take a second to talk about how it works. We provide this massive data set to people. It's your data. We provide you access to it. We don't do anything with it. We don't have access to it, but we provide you a mechanism with granular controls to be able to connect to that M365 data to select a data source, a population, and a duration, a time period, to copy into your Azure environment. From your Azure environment, once it's there, it's landed, not going to get too technical, but it's landed as raw JSON data. You can then marry that up with other systems of record in your data lake to really light up this ability to enrich your existing analytics, or think about, boy, how much time or energy did we spend on that divestiture discussion? How much time or energy did we spend on that acquisition conversation? How do we optimize that? Was that the right decision? Who was involved? From an architectural standpoint, this is just an opportunity to have a quick flash of it. The technology that we use to copy is called Microsoft Graph Data Connect. It's a lot to say, so we shorten it to talk about it as M365 data. You can see the sources that are there. It copies it again into Azure, upon which you can do all kinds of analytics magic within Azure. You can surface that in Power BI, or you can surface that in native applications or custom applications. We're not limited to Power BI. You can also, as the slide depicts, bring in other data. So when you take this data about how people are working and you marry it with outcomes data, it really lights up together. Looks like Gladys answered that last question. Within the environment, we have three different data types. It'll make sense when I share the next slide, but I wanted to orient you to what the key is. Basic data, which is just raw data. So the actual content that I create as a user, again, you have complete control over whether you want just the to or the from, or you want all of the information that's available from an email perspective. As an example, we offer cleaned data sets where you don't just get the raw data, you get what I say, the data that really matters for that particular set of data. And we offer curated data sets, things that are, I like to call them calculated. Marketing team has talked about them as curated. It's the same thing, where the value you're getting is actually an output generated on top of the data. This is a view into the data sets that we have available today, and a little bit of a view into how we see the evolution of this product across time horizon. As you can see, we've got data from Azure Active Directory, which is really important to pair up with the data that you get from Outlook or Teams or SharePoint or Viva Insight soon, or Office 365 soon. It is the combination of these data sets that allow you to shape the data and understand the relationship within your organization of the people, so that you could see, for example, how is our finance team communicating with our marketing team as a result. But just understand that last slide I talked about, that key in the upper right, a lot of this is basic. As you move from left to right, you start to get things that are more cleaned, which is why this Microsoft use of it for SharePoint is so valuable and so unique in the marketplace, because we're delivering this cleaned data set and then more in the direction of calculated moving forward. I'm going to talk about a couple customer scenarios, and then I'm going to be shortly handing it over to Gladys. So this is how customers are using this today. We've got a major real estate firm, a commercial firm, who blew me away when we understood that they don't have, for their commercial brokers, something like a Redfin or a Zillow, where they can understand what's available in the marketplace to help serve their customer needs. Instead, that information comes to them in email, in PDFs that are generated by the selling or representing broker. And so what this organization chose to do is mine, quote unquote, those email attachments, strip out all that relative information, create a database that gives them a compelling and competitive advantage so that they can serve their customers better with a full view of what's available in the marketplace. Blew my mind. They love the solution. They're scaling it out globally. Another very, very large financial services firm. In fact, we've got multiple in that category that's using the data to improve customer relationships. Understanding, for example, if there are multiple touch points for a customer, and let's say a customer calls and says, I want to sell some stock, it happens to mention, because they want to buy a vacation home, that financial service firm wants to harvest that information and be able to provide an outreach to that customer directly from their home mortgage division. Hey, understand you were selling some stock. We'd like to make sure you know that we offer a fantastic home mortgage opportunity for you. We'd love to continue to do business with you. Think about that kind of flow that's happening as a result of information being passed around. In the past, when people were in the same office, that could happen pretty regularly, but now in a distributed workforce, that information doesn't flow in the same way. They're building some systems that replicate that. Understanding how data moves through an organization. This on the one on the left here is really how we as Microsoft are using this tooling to look at our SharePoint environment. I've already kind of told you that story in brief. How is data moving? Do the right people or not the right people? Do not the right people not have access? Do the right people have access to this data as a function of its sensitivity label? Is it confidential or highly confidential? And is it leaving our organization? I touched on hybrid work, very large telecom. If I mentioned the brand, most of you would be aware of it. All of you would be aware of it for that matter. They are looking at, okay, how do we improve this hybrid work environment for our people? How do we understand how people are coming together through this Teams data that was not available to them previously? And with that, I'm nearly on time, a little bit over. I'm sorry, Gladys, I talked a lot. I will move over and start taking your questions, and I'll leave it to you to do some demonstrations.
Yes, thank you, Scott. Can everyone hear me? Okay, good. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, hope you can see that.
Yes.
Okay, good. So I want to show you, I will start with this demo. This is actually what can happen in an organization after you did some announcements. This is basically related to, let's imagine that an organization it's planning to acquire a new company, and you inform this to all your employees. So this communication report was created for the HR team to analyze their sentiment of their employees after communicating this or announce this acquisition. It allows you to go back in time as far as you wish, like to check the sentiment over time. And it basically, we are seeing here that after this communication was made, the employee satisfaction is decreasing, as you can see here, like 28% as it was before. Like there's an employee turnover that increased as well to 39%. And the time that it takes to onboard new employees after this acquisition is now of 29 days. Now, another thing that is super interesting here is, and this is all thanks to analyzing M365 data, as Scott mentioned, using Microsoft Graph Data Connect. This is allowing these teams to understand or surface hidden patterns of these communications. Like, if we analyze in detail these communication details, you will see all the teams or departments that you have in your organization. And most of them that you can see, like only this executive management team is the one that is communicating to each of these teams. But we are not seeing cross collaboration between these teams as much as it should be. Another thing that we can analyze a little bit here is the sentiment that is occurring by department. This is thanks to, again, to Microsoft Graph Data Connect, and that we are using, or we are extracting keywords as well of this conversation. We are analyzing emails, team chats. This conversation provides us with a lot of these insights. And this is happening like in your day-to-day with your employees, how they are communicating, which ones are engaging with other teams or not. So we can see that the sentiment and most of the words that are used here are shown here, like they are wondering about losing their jobs, maybe. They're wondering about the salaries, the stability of their job, and that's creating a lot of anxiety. And that's a few insights that we can get for analyzing this data of using Teams, emails. And this will actually allow us to create or to understand the trends as well. That's why we have this predictive analytics. Like, we can see that we need to do something. Like, this is still like an ongoing trend that is going to decrease employee satisfaction. That we're going to have more employee turnovers in the future. So this is something that executives can start analyzing and checking, like they need to take some key actions or improvements so this can change. So after this happens, we actually have these executives are planning to create and to improve the way they will communicate new changes to the company. So this will actually allow them to showcase new performance bonuses to the employees as they are seeing these trends, more learning and development for them. And this all through a town hall meeting. After that. Yes. So now this is a new view of the same report after a few months of this communication occur. Now, one of the things that you can first see is that the employee turnover actually is it's better. Like it increased 10%, like, which means like it's not happening as much as it was before. Now the employee hire time as well is now in 20 days. We have the employee satisfaction again that increases to up to 68%. And we have, again, our goals here planned for these insights. Now, one of the things that is happening here in the communication details, as I told you before, now you can see like how all these teams are now collaborating between each other. That's a really great insight that you can start seeing, that you don't have bottlenecks in this kind of communication, that the teams that should be working together are already working together, communicating through the emails, Teams, or calendar events. So you can actually analyze all that. Like in now in your keywords, you can see that the frequent communication that are occurring in your organization are actually now related to growth, to market, and to future plans that they have. You will see that the employee satisfaction as well is increasing, and that we have positive trends for that as well. The same as the turnover is decreasing. Sorry. As well, now you can review again the sentiment by department. The sentiment, which is now getting more positive in these conversations. And yes, basically, I can show you one of the comparisons report that we created for this. Yes, this is basically helping you now to understand a little bit like how it was before and after we created this dashboard. We communicated this to our employees after the executives applied some key insights with this and try to improve or help their employees with taking some more actions that they can make them happy with in the company.
Gladys, if I might, just for those of you who are on the phone and listening to this, think about the change that this potentially makes for you to be able to see this from near real-time data sources versus some polling. So maybe you captured some of this in a pulse poll, but otherwise this would almost effectively be unknown to you. You would not have this granular level of data. And all we are doing here is reasoning over content that is already being created in your organization. It's data that already exists. We're not asking anybody to do anything else, but instead we're analyzing it to surface these kind of trends and insights. And I love the pre and the post, right? How were things trending before the town hall, which was effectively the interaction in this particular case? And as a result of the clarity, communication, and the enthusiasm that was generated, things started to, as a result, trend in the better direction. So fantastic ability to see your employees in a different way.
Correct. And now, as Scott told you about, we have a new dashboard that we are working on. It's going to be released soon. This is basically an organization network analysis that allows you like to understand or explore your company-wide collaboration patterns that are based on these communications that I told you, like it can be emails, Teams, calendar events, all this by sender units or sender departments. And this will help us to obtain the flows or distinct connectivity, like, and help us to unlock this productivity, employee engagement, and more. One of the things that I would like to show you in this one is the influence analysis. This is something that is really cool to me, like to understand who has the ability to be well connected to other teams in your organization. That is great. Like all of us like need someone that help us to find the right contact, for example, or to identify like the user that can provide us like an efficient answer. So that is something that we are trying to accomplish in here. You can see the nodes. Each node represents a user in your company. We are adding this and analyzing 2 departments, the sales that occur in America and in Europe. Now, we have like an average of this influence for these departments and how they can impact the organizations. And this is basically just to help us understand who can drive changes in the workforce, and accelerate improvement plans and promote as well the company culture, which is important to all of us. Another one that, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry for the interruption. If you think about this as this pretty simple explanation, Gladys is more influential than Scott. So if we're trying to drive change, or even something as simple as technical adoption, if we double down our investment with Gladys, we're going to see a return of 10x because she's more influential than if you invest that with me, who might be able to only influence 1 or 2 people. That's what this level of analysis allows you to do. Who are the targets that we want to invest in for purpose X because of their position in the network?
Right. Now, what if we want to empower inclusive networks? We are creating here the ability for organizations to see as well, according to this number of connections, how can, or you can identify isolated groups that might be lacking information or that are being left apart. This is something important. Let's mind that you have 2 teams that needs to work on a product or to deliver a successful product, you understand that they need to collaborate since the product is being designed, and you're seeing that these two teams are not actually collaborating. You can take then some actions for them to start working together. Like we have this network graph. It basically allows you to see like there's only one point of connection here, or at least through the communications are occurring only through these points, like through these nodes or users. So why is that happening? Why maybe this that we're calling this department is missing information or being left apart by another teams? So you can actually be able to analyze this kind of insights with all this data that you actually have in your own M365 ecosystem. You can see the teams or the departments with most connections. You see here. Yeah, so this is super interesting to analyze. One of the other things that we are working on is something that we call the bridging analysis. This is actually allowing you to evaluate information flows. We capture these information flows that are happening between two employees. It helps you to analyze like potential gatekeepers, change agents, or controllers as well to remove bottlenecks. We have, for example, here you can see teams are with their bridging index that is low and an influence index. You can see that in this chart. It allows you to understand like the probabilities is that to be how is this flow or this node communicating information to others. Like this will allow you to identify from here who's actually controlling, who is able to remove bottlenecks, and maybe who's able from here to enable more collaboration in teams member to others that are not maybe well connected, or there's a bridge. That's why we call it like that in this collaboration in the organization.
When you think about the combination of influence and bridging, you're identifying the most optimum points of leverage to invest, because not only do you have an influential person, but an influential person that spans multiple organizations.
Yes. Now, we can move to another solution accelerator that we have created. We call this project staffing because this allows anyone in the company to find for skills in this company. Like it will allow these managers, for example, if they want to build a team, they can do that. Like now, if the demo gods are with me, I will try to find someone that can help me building this solution. So I will look for data science, someone that is actually.
Data science skills are hard to find in an organization, and they're usually in low supply and high demand. So how do we figure out where those folks fit inside of the organization is also my way of covering and dancing while the demo spins.
Yeah, and that's actually a good way to understand as well as Scott, like who's available. Like let's mind that you want to work with someone, but it's not available now. So you can see that as well with this solution accelerator that we created, as well as the profile skills. And this is not something, as Scott told you before, this is not something that these users need to add or to to provide a description of their abilities. It's not that way. This is all by checking all this information that you already have in your Office 365, Microsoft 365. So this is super cool to see who can you be creating a team with or start working. You can also have the option to refine this field, this search. Let's mind that I want to find someone that is, I don't know, like.
How about Dallas?
Dallas with me working maybe. So we can do that as well. Let's search Um,
Again, in the
yes,
hybrid world,
yes.
understanding where people are can be difficult. Understanding who has what skills, we can make that easier, not only for building teams, but for accessing questions. Who is the right person for me to ask about this? Who has the right expertise? How do I get to them quickly?
Yes, and maybe someone that is near me or that we can collaborate in the same time zone. That is something important too. Now, let's remind that we also want to check by who's actually at the role of this, must be like a data scientist. We can do that as well, like to refine a little bit more or search.
Yeah, there were multiple different role types that surfaced there. So maybe we really don't want to talk to a velocity manager as an example.
That's correct. And now we have like only three results in here that we can contact, we can reach out, we can see when they're going to be available to start working or to start collaborating in a new project. Okay. So that will be like for skills finder.
Thanks, Gladys. Can I just
and
voice over for something that I've mentioned in the chat too for everyone?
yes, of course.
As
Yeah, I
you
cannot
think
see the chat.
about, if you were with us at the beginning where I showed the Ferris wheel and all the use cases, the nice thing about this data is you copy it once and you can reuse it for all of those use cases. So the same data set that was being used for O&A is the same data set that can be used to fuel this, and is the same data set that can be used to fuel relationship mesh, which Gladys is going to show in just a second. Obviously, those might be different population scopes, and we respect that, but that same underlying data, you can reuse it for all of the use cases that make sense for you to do.
Yes, correct. Now with this solution, relationship mesh is actually how we can be able to create or build strong relationships. We have our customers here, and we are analyzing as well our sellers. So and maybe their key contacts that they have. Like we will obtain like this summary of our high priority accounts. We have multiple industries that we can select. We can get to decide like financial, healthcare, and manufacturing services. We can do that. We have a variety of sectors too that we can apply to these filters. We have all our sellers that are in our company, so we can kind of have a clear view of their priority accounts, how are the communication flowing with these accounts. And we also will have something really cool in this solution that we will understand which accounts need attention from us, as well as we are able to see the transaction size of this, and we can figure it out, the transaction size from that data as well. Now, one of the things that is super interesting here that hope we can see the detail page is like as well, we are showing you the network of this. We selected this seller, Aisha. You can see who is Aisha communicating with. And you can actually have an event tracker. We are using the events dataset from Microsoft Graph Data Connect to understand since when they are started the communication with these accounts, like through emails to meetings. So we can have like a clear view of the next actions that these sellers need to do with them. Like when this touch point happen or occur in time, you can analyze that, all these interactions, and to understand like maybe a few next actions that you need to do. You can actually, I'm imagining something here, like this is, remember that this is all tailored to the needs of your organization. We are showcasing these solutions, but this is actually something that you can tailor to what you need. So I'm thinking here, maybe let's imagine that we can have like this checklist to understand, okay, you have this meeting with the CEO in last 6 months. You can now take an extra action or a next action to go again and re-engage with them. In case you have any accounts that are being left or that are kind of left behind in these communications. So it's all about all the power that you have in your own Microsoft 365 data, all these interactions, all these communications, every email messages that you do. Even we now have power to understand files, how these files were actually, how many times were you working in that file, if who edited this a file in OneDrive SharePoint. So you can understand all these kind of behaviors that you have in your organization and create like endless solutions from there. And as Scott told you, something interesting here, like we are actually allowing you to extract this data from Microsoft IP Connect, and you will have it in your own Azure storage. From there, you can create or apply a variety of, I don't know, like maybe you can apply Azure Cognitive Services or more Power Intelligence up top of that data that you only extracted from Microsoft Web Data Connect. So this is super interesting. I hope you liked a few of the solutions that we have. And with that, I'll pass it over to you, Scott.
Thanks, Gladys. Can we stay here just for a second? I want to comment on a couple things. You know, we talked about this, mindful that we in engineering support all industries and all customers. That this is from a traditional selling marketplace. So this might apply to pharma, definitely not in this same way to providers. But it could apply to providers if you think about your relationship with doctors or practices. Who has the best relationship? What is that relationship like? How often is it being nurtured? You know, in a competitive environment for providers, that's one of the ways you could think about using this data, where a lot of that collaboration would be over email, calendar, and Teams as an example. And when we showed the expertise location, you could think about that from an application standpoint of also being, hey, how do I find a doctor? What expertise do we have in the network? How do we navigate that using that same expertise location without putting an ask on top of the providers to be able to populate that? So trying to kind of draw both of those to a last mile, specifically to the audience that we are talking to here. Let me reload the PowerPoint slide as we go back to that. And we will bring this to a close. Happy to take any questions that have not yet been asked along the way, and appreciate those who have been asking questions. Bear with me as I accelerate the navigation of the deck here to get us right back on track. For those of you who, hopefully, Gladys, can you see slides? Give me a thumbs up. Thank you. For those of you who are interested in what you've heard today, the next steps for you, first of all, and this question was asked earlier, do we need to be using M365? The answer is absolutely yes. What we're doing is creating a new opportunity for those who are using it to get access to that data in bulk raw form. There was a question about licensing, just to make sure if folks weren't reading the chat. Everybody who uses the M365 services already has a license. That's what allows them to use the services upon which they're generating this data. There is not a license necessary to copy the data. There's a nominal fee that's an Azure consumption charge to copy the data over. So that's how it's a consumption model, which means you pay for only what you use, which is really nice in terms of being able to access the data in that way. We have found from our engagement with customers, which we do directly, both of us as well as others on our team, that it's really good to get aligned with stakeholders. Make sure that you understand what they want and that the data can deliver that, especially in an environment where folks are focused with doing more with less. This data is really well aligned to doing more with less because the data already exists and is being generated. There's no ask to do anything different short of copying the data for analysis. And that you think about the business case. What are we going to get as an outcome? What's the measurable impact or change we can drive as a result of the analysis? If you think back to how I started with all those headlines, boy, are all of those things the right decisions? Do those executives have the right data to be making those decisions? Would they make the same decisions again? Are the right people involved? Are too many people involved? Would these analytics that we've shown today give you better sense of your organization along the way? And would you make same decisions? How we as Microsoft can help you. We've got data and AI, global black belts, and solution sales professionals that can help you. They've been readied about this new offering from us, and they're eager to talk to you about it. There are opportunities to visit what we call the Microsoft Technology Center to explore how this would work from a whiteboarding session or to have a rapid prototype session. Or we've got folks who can help do a pilot with leveraging some of these solution accelerators that you've seen from us today so that you can get rapid value. That's pretty much what we have to discuss here today. And I know there's a couple slides left. We've kind of taken Q&A along the way. I'll give attention to the chat as that comes up. But I also want to let you know, as part of the series, the series continues. Although we might have been the most fun, entertaining, and best looking presenters of the bunch, there are others that will be coming along later on today and tomorrow. So hopefully you tend to those as well.
Thanks, Scott and Gladys. This is an amazing presentation and offered up it was mind-blowing as I saw the comments from others. Yes, we realize that many of you may not be able to access some content. Scott, there was something heading out to one of our SharePoint sites for the solution, but we'll make that document available out on the site this afternoon. Rest assured, the recording and everything you've seen in the presentation will be available along with the video right up on the HLS blog. So I'll be sending out an email in a little while once we get it up there, letting you know, see the link, as well as we love to hear your survey that Sarah just posted. Hey, we can't do this without you. So we'd love the feedback. Please fill that out. Scott and Gladys certainly want to know how they did. I think big thumbs up. Amazing job. Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Yeah. Scott, can you go to the next slide if you don't mind, just to make it a little bit easier? Another thing, Jonathan and I are both leading the Health and Life Science Community Connection Group. So we've created a Yammer site for all of our clients to come together, talk about their experience about Microsoft Office 365, but also we do post content on upcoming events that we do. So we do have 30-minute snackable content sessions every third Thursday of the month. So if you'd like to get information on that, please feel free to take out your phone and scan the code or fill out the registration, and we'll get you added to our Yammer community. But Jonathan, anything else that we maybe missed?
If you roll back one slide, don't forget, we've got a session this afternoon and a really great session on enabling hybrid work. So time to sign up, share it with your coworkers, anyone. So we're always happy to have more. And we'll probably be doing a lot of this work in the fall or in the springtime. So rest assured that we'll be building some amazing new content and looking to host a spring 2023 Teams Productivity Summit. And we look forward to having all of you come and join again.
Yeah. And I see there's a question in the window from Pam just commenting, when do you think this type of information will be available to customers who are not part of the HLS community? We open it to all. So if this is content that is relative to your organization, some of it, as Scott mentioned in the beginning, were use cases for health and life science. But overall, this content can be used for any organization out there. Feel free to still join, and then it'll be up to you if you want to join. But we are trying to expand this out to our other customer success units. So you may see some other communities kind of be broken apart, but always feel free to join if you'd like.
Super.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone. If you have any other questions, we'll stick around for a couple more minutes, but appreciate everyone joining, and hopefully we see you on our afternoon session later on today around Company Communicator and the Teams Emergency Operations Centers app. And then tomorrow we have another great session just focused on hybrid work.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. And everybody have a good, safe holiday, and we'll see you in 2023.
right. Thanks, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Hey.
Bye.
Ho, ho, ho. Ho, ho, ho. Have a great day.
Bye.